love it. I love it. Because
it's very rewarding.
And the thing that you're doing is, and I love this, is that you are focused on the connection and helping people understand the divine that lives within them. And that regardless of how you may see that or express that I can value who you are as a person. And I love that you were able to do that with so many different people, and not feeling the need to change them or change who you are to be able to fit. That you found that in all of those communities, there was a place for you to be because you made yourself available and open. And I think that's so huge. But let me ask you this, because you've been able to do that well with other people, but how has that looked with your family and you?
Well, I've learned some hard lessons about telling stories that don't belong to me. Certainly, I think I tend to be more open about myself and my life than other people are naturally. Partially, I think that's because I'm a writer, and I write a lot. I write a lot about my experience. I write a lot about who I am and what I'm thinking and what I'm going through. And it's hard sometimes when your story is interwoven with someone who's not quite there yet. Like, they don't quite want you to share their story as part of your own. And so I was in a relationship with a person who was very private, and he did not want me to share anything about him. And so that was really a helpful exercise, because I was able to learn how to separate out what's my story to tell and what is really not my story to tell.
Wow, that's powerful.
It's a really important thing for you to learn how to do if you're a storyteller, because I think a lot of storytellers too get caught up in this idea that because stories are so beautiful to us, that we can tell the stories of other people. And it's not just our family, and it's not just personal stories, but I can't tell a story of a Black woman. I have not walked in that. I cannot tell that story because I am a white person, and I don't have the perspective necessary. But that person or that group of people, if they want to tell their story, I can make it. I can amplify that story. I can share that story, but it's not my place to take words and put them out of my own mouth on behalf of someone else. And I think that's tricky as a writer and, as a storyteller is navigating where amplification, kind of intersects with appropriation, I guess.
Well, but it's also understanding power dynamics, because I think sometimes as the storyteller, you're in a position to be able to be heard. And when you have that kind of power where you have an audience, you have to be very mindful of, as you said, telling the stories of other people, because you're now viewed as an authority just because you've got a mic in your hand and you're on a stage. Now, that can be disputed, but the reality is you've got a captive audience that's listening to you. And so I think it's very important, that you've been able to be aware of the power that you have in telling stories and recognizing the boundaries of how do you tell other people's stories and how do you show up in a place that doesn't lessen their story because you're now telling it, but you're creating space for their stories to be heard as well and including them. And that's very different.
Yeah, definitely. My sort of internal rule is if the person wants their story to be told, and they need assistance in telling that story or a platform to tell it from, then my platform is theirs. Like, I will give my platform to amplify voices.
You do. Oh, I've seen you do it. I mean, you are very intentional about creating those spaces and not feeling like you're losing power in doing that. And it goes to my question for you about, you're really big about this allyship piece. Talk more about how that shows up in your life.
Well, it is my life. It shows up everywhere in my life. So in joining the tech industry, it was really the first place that I felt that I could be openly queer. There's quite a lot of queer people in technology, and so for the first time in my life, I really got to build relationships with other queer people. And I had always been in a sort of assumed straight relationship, heterosexual relationships, and I had always been surrounded by heterosexual people. And so kind of coming into my own, and part of telling my story was really sharing that part of me, that, yeah, that's not something to be ashamed of. I am queer. But I grew up in such a conservative backdrop. The only gay person I knew until I was out of high school was murdered in Tyler, and that left an impact. Like to know that the singular gay person who's out that you know was shot to death in a field in Tyler, like that influenced me greatly on, like, this is not a safe thing for me. Like, I cannot come out. I cannot show people this part of me. When I came into technology, I really, for the first time, felt safe being open about who I was. Now, the company is based out of San Francisco, and all of us know San Francisco is like the gay capital of the world. And I remember the first time I went into San Francisco, seeing the rainbow flags everywhere and seeing gay people walking down the street holding hands. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is real. I've fallen into paradise. But it was really life-changing and liberating for me. But I had a lot of homework to do. I had to really identify what that story meant to me and understand the story of my predecessors. So hearing about the Stonewall riots and doing gay history research was incredibly empowering, and it taught me so much about where I am because of who came before me. They leave it all out of school. So, yeah.
Yeah. But how have you been able to navigate your sexual journey and your sexuality as a queer person? How do you do that in a place where, you know, as you mentioned, someone being killed for that? How have you been able to navigate that?
I build community around me. I know where the safe places are. I avoid places that aren't safe. I am fortunate enough to be able to pass. When I walk down the street, people don't look at me and think, oh, there's a queer person. They just think I'm a 40-something-year-old white woman, which means that I have the second most amount of privilege in the entire world, right next to the 40-something-year-old white man. And so I work to make sure that I'm in a safe environment. Now, 2 of my kids are queer, and they do not quite understand the possibilities of what could happen to them in Texas. And so it's been kind of a dividing line of trying to educate them on, like, this is your reality, and also say, but this is a safe space here. And trying to help them, you know, navigate that for themselves and understand our queer history and understand how to navigate it in the world.
Well, Joni, I know that there's so much more to you and to this conversation, and I want people to be able to reach out to you. How can they contact you and go deeper? Because this is just a taste of the depth of who you are. How can they reach you?
They can find me on Facebook or Twitter. My Twitter is @JoniKBryan. Or they can contact me through my website, one of which is 940coaching.com, 940coaching.com, or 940.net. So, yeah, join the conversation. Tell me your story. I would love that.
I would love for people to do that and to check out the work that you're doing with your new company. I'm so excited for you. And at some point, I got to have you come back so that we can talk more about 940 and how you are designing these amazing spaces for nonprofits and making the playing field more level for all of us. And so, Joni, thank you for being on the show. Again, I'm going to have you come back. But this is another episode of The Tapestry. Again, I'm Dr. Francois Booker Drew, and this is just a way for you to hear the stories of amazing women and being able to see yourself reflected in their possibilities. Thanks again for tuning in.